Our speakers are Rhonda Webb and Chelle Keplinger, right?
Good enough.
Yeah, close enough.
Close.
Rhonda is CEO of the medical center, and as a patient there, I want to say that she has done some really phenomenal things. I really appreciate the work that she has been doing. So let's get started.
Okay, so I thought all we were talking about is Medicaid, but there are a few other questions they wanted me to address, so I'll do that. CEOs love to talk about themselves mostly. And so you should know my background. I never started out wanting to be the CEO of a small rural hospital and keep it open, especially during COVID. My husband drove me out here kicking and screaming. In 2014 is when we moved permanently here, and this is my 8th year of being his boss. So my background is that I'm a nephrologist with the kidney specialist. We're rule following doctors. I spent some time in hospital administration. I was a medical director for safety and quality of a big health system back home, and I clinically practiced up until I took this job. But again, it was never my career goal to be the CEO of a rural hospital. But here I am, and I will tell you that we are a special district. I have 7 publicly elected board members, and I am their one employee, and my job is to operationalize PSMC, which is one of 6 hospitals in this state that own their ambulance. Ambulances lose money, so most hospitals don't own them. So we have magic here, and we had one to give that up. We are also a rural health clinic that is on our campus, and we are a critical access hospital with 11 beds. Our job is a lot of times to stabilize and shift, keep what we can keep here, move it out if we can, and get them out fast sometimes, because even though we're a level 4 trauma center, we get level 1 traumas when they happen. We've already had more traumas at our ER this year than all of last year put together. So we're busy, and so when you see things in the paper that have happened, typically they're going to come our way. We do get a mill levy. I was asked to bring that up. That was in the early 2000s. We started the ambulance like in the 82, and then in the early 2000s there was a mill levy. It's never been increased. It is based on property taxes. It is $2 million about that we receive a year. That is 16 days of operating cash for us. We spend $124,000 a day, sorry. Try to keep it down. But that's just the business of running hospitals. Rural hospitals run very lean margins. That's just the way it is. We are subject to all the same rules, most of the same rules, as bigger hospitals. We work with systems. We believe in systems. But we are independent, and we're hopeful to stay independent. Because when you have systems making decisions about rural medicine that are in Denver or somewhere else, their decisions don't always understand what the community needs. Our job is to assess the community or take the assessment of public health and then try to do what we can do. We have to balance those things that we lose money on with those things we make revenue off of. We are in 2018 with my first year as CEO, and I did the smartest thing I could do, and I hired Chelle Keplinger, a very smart CFO, and she started in May, and she told me we had 23 days of cash on hand, and that's not much. It wasn't enough for our bond covenants. We're transparent. We're financial. I'm not a finance guy, but I had to have 60 days. I told her I had to have 60 days by the end of the year, and she said, I can't get you there. So we listened to what Chelle said, and we got there the next year. We took a little bit of punishment that first year. But I'd like to say that I have the best job in the world because I get to lead an amazing team of people up there, and I get to take credit for what they do. And I just have wonderful people, and it's a great place. If you have problems that come up, I need to hear about them. Just call. We have a process that we follow up on every issue. Our bills are hard to read and hard to understand. We are working with our electronic health record now. We've finally gotten into a point we think we can get that changed. So we have a financial counselor who's on site Monday through Friday. And if your bills are confusing because they don't tell you exactly what you had that day, and it goes by like a PIN number, or guarantor number, it's a confusing thing. It's related to our electronic health record, but we do get that complaint. And if you'll I try to tell everybody when I speak about that, so they'll know that they can come. Carrie or somebody else will log in the system, explain what you're getting billed for, check and make sure everything's being done right. So we're happy to listen to that. Or any other things, actually. What else? We do have a new service line. Like I said, I didn't prepare anything because I thought I was just going to introduce her. We did add pulmonary medicine, pulmonology this year. We were lucky enough, and Dr. I checked with the CEO at Mercy, where Dr. Holcomb worked, and asked him would it be okay if Dr. Holcomb read our pulmonary functions because we were going to get our own machine. He said yes. And so as I was touring Dr. Holcomb around, he said, well, I really want to work here. I really want to work here. I really want to work here. And at the end of it all, he said, well, don't tell anybody, but I'm going to work on working here. And I said, well, you told 4 of your patients, and this is Pagosa's friend. Just get ready, because it's a unit that's starting in December. It's been very successful. He brings a lot of patients from Durango. He's just a great guy. He's very happy with his practice here. He lives in kind of this side of Mayfield, I believe. We have our new orthopedic surgeon. My husband is the orthopedic surgeon here. He started ortho in 2014. He would like me to tell you that he's not getting ready to retire. He still likes working, as do I. And we did, however, add another orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Jeremiah Steed. He started in September. Dr. Steed is from here. He has 4 children, and he called us about 2 years ago when he was about to go do a joint fellowship and asked could he potentially work here. So it's like the perfect transition for the long term for here. He did a total joint fellowship, but he's willing to do general orthopedics, which is what my husband does. So when we trained, there wasn't much specialties in orthopedic surgery. Now it's all specialized, right? But Dr. Steed is get right into the community, go in a busy practice. We got to make a robot for him. Again, these things we have to think a lot about. You know, when you're a doctor, you sort of shout orders all day and somebody does what you say. But in the administrative world, especially in a hospital like this, we want to do something, we got to think about it in the budget. So that's just the way we are. And I think that's, if you have questions, I can answer them now. We can answer them after Shelley tells you about Medicaid. I will tell you what I've told my team, that, and I'm apolitical here, but I call it COVID 2.0, because when COVID first started, we were sometimes having to change policies more than once a day to try to keep up with what was happening all around. And this has kind of been like that too, because things are being told to us, and we kind of don't know yet if it's going to actually happen. So we're preparing for the worst, but we don't know. So I tell my staff, just settle down. We're going to have our hand on the toe of the John boat, and we're going to sail this through this and see what happens. And that's really what we can do right now. And so we're lucky to be in what is the best branch position we have been in since the hospital opened. And to that point, I give Shelley.
Well, hello. I wasn't expecting this big a group. And people that will do work that I do don't like to speak in front of groups. So anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about Medicaid today. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the cuts that they're proposing for us. We're looking at this as a worst case scenario because as you've read every day, they're throwing stuff out there and they're saying, well, it could be a combination of this, it could be a combination of that. And so what we've put together is just the worst case scenario if they really cut everything that they're talking about cutting right now, what kind of shape will that put us in?
I have to put it closer. Okay.
I think I'm loud enough without it, but anyway, so the first slide we're going to go through, and it's not going to do it. Medicaid. I don't know how many of you know about Medicaid and what the rules are for Medicaid. So I thought I would just start with this. And so to qualify for Medicaid, you either have to be a pregnant woman, you have to be a child, you have to be over 19 with an income, and I just used a family of 4 here of $41,500. And then that care includes primary care, specialty care, all outpatient treatment, emergency, behavioral health, dental, vision, medications, and many more services without limits or copays. So that gives you just kind of an indication of just the basics of that program and who might qualify for that. So you were looking at low-income families for the most part. During the Medicaid expansion, they expanded that out beyond the normal limits of Medicaid. And what they were trying to do was trying to get more people covered so that there would be less people that went without health insurance and then less people that got sick and went without health care. So this is what we know, which that slide should be a lot longer, but it's not. We know that the Department of Healthcare Policy and Financing, we call that HIPAA for short, that's just the terminology we use. In this county last year, spent $22,583,000 on healthcare. That's a lot. Now, I will tell you that a quarter of that was spent in long-term care. So when folks get to those long-term care nursing home settings, not in the skilled beds, not in the acute hospitals, but in those long-term settings. There are currently 3,000, well, this number could have changed since the new year, but close. There are 3,656 residents of Archuleta County that are currently on Medicaid. So that's about a fifth of our population, right? Actually, it ends up being, because of the second homeowners and all of that, it ends up being 26.51% of our population is on Medicaid. We are the expansion state, and that meant that 1,405 of those adults and 208 of those children were put on the Medicaid program during the expansion. So they didn't qualify before, but now we're looking at 1,600 people that are now on that. And one of the things that they're talking about is hitting that Medicaid expansion. Am I talking too fast? No? Okay. I do that when I'm nervous. Okay, what we don't know. We don't know how Medicaid is going to affect New Mexico. We know it's one of the top 5 states that's going to get hit. They're going to get hit the hardest because they expanded theirs more than what the other states did. And so they have a lot more people on that expanded program. We don't know their numbers though. We're not privy to how many people in their state or how many people in the counties closest to us have New Mexico Medicaid. We do take New Mexico Medicaid and we treat those patients all the time, but we don't know what their actual population looks like. We don't know, and I'm gonna have to get into, we don't know how many of those patients will convert to what we call HDC, it's the hospital discounted care. And that is a state mandated regulation that came down, went live in September of 22, that said, you will provide the same health care to people who cannot pay as you do to everyone else. And in that process, you can only charge them the Medicaid rate, and they have 3 years to pay you. And you can't send them collections or do any of those other things until they've missed a number of payments over time. So that is another program that is a state mandated program that's outside of even our financial assistance policy. And then we don't know how many people are going to start seeking their care in the emergency room. It's a lot cheaper to do it in a primary care setting. But like I said, they currently have no co-pays and they have no limits. And so if they're seeking their care in the primary care, they're doing the right thing. But that doesn't mean that they're going to be able to afford to do that going forward. Or how many people just won't seek care. There's going to be that population too. Supplemental payments. So as a critical access hospital in the state of Colorado, and critical access hospital is a status that we have because we have less than 25 beds. We get paid a little differently, and there's some supplemental payments that we receive that's a combination of the state and federal government. So these supplemental payments were established to help rural hospitals stay open. That was their only function because we don't have the volume and we still have the same or more overhead than some of the big hospitals. It's hard for us to be efficient. You may have 10 patients that day, you may have 1, but we still have to provide the same level of care no matter what. And we're committed to doing that as a rural hospital. That's what we do. These supplemental payments for 2024 were $795,766 for us. For me, this is at risk right now with what's on the table. They talked about all of the federal matching is going to go away. And so what this looks like, there's a couple that are just very state specific, but with their budget the way it looks right now, it doesn't look much better than the feds. So we're worried about this. Provider fee. This is a really strange program, and most of it's confusing. It was established in the state of Colorado, and almost every state has it. I've been in 3 rural hospitals now, and it's a fee established to the hospital. It's like almost like a taxing program that each hospital pays in a dollar amount based on their share of what the fee should be. Then the state takes all of that money throughout the state and they send it up to the federal government. The federal government matches it. They bring it back. They take a lot of it to pay Medicaid claims, and then they send the rest back to the hospital. Does that make sense?
No.
Most of what we do every day doesn't make sense. We know the mission, it's always a challenge to get there. So the goal of this really was to help try to make us whole on the Medicaid payments. And I'm going to show you that in a minute. So why do we do it? It's a legal way to get some federal matching funds back to the state to try to support our communities. So in 2024, Medicaid paid us 24% of charges. 24 cents on the dollar. So, ouch, right? Ouch. And then that's the equivalent to 60% of our costs. So we're not even getting paid our costs on those Medicaid folks. But we can talk about Medicare too. The way we're paid for Medicare, we settle up at the end of the year. We fill out this report. I fill out this report this thick. We send it to the federal government. They disallow $6 million worth of expenses. And then they said, okay, this is what we're going to settle on. So they give us 101% of costs. Not too bad, right? And then they minus 2%. So they started that in 2014, 2015 era. And so we get 99% of costs for our Medicare patients. We get 60% of costs for our Medicaid patients. And between those two payers, it's 70% of our business. Wow. It's ouch, right? Now you can appreciate my job, right? So the loss of the provider fees to our facility in 2014, that would be $3.2 million. 2014's numbers, everything's based off 2014 because that's the final numbers that I have that we're working on the audit for right now. And carrying those forward, they vary a little bit, but I wanted to use actual numbers.
Why is it 10 years ago?
Yeah, why don't you get on?
You
You mean 2024? Wouldn't that be nice if we got audited, showing our budget? We got audited closer to the year when we performed. No. My first year here in 2018 as CEO, I had 3 cost reports settled. 2 to the negative, 1 to the positive. All of which occurred prior to my moving here. They're just that far behind.
We're working on, right now I'm working on 2019. So that gives you any indication. We do try to, we do things throughout the year. We have models that we project and try to figure out how much we're going to owe them, how much they're going to owe us, and try to make that even so that there's not a big payback, but we also reserve for those. So we know they're covered. But this is a huge chunk of money for us. Yes, ma'am.
So that loss, was that 2014 or 2024?
I'm sorry, 2020, did I say 2014?
Yeah.
It's 2024.
Gotcha.
Yeah, call me out on that.
That's okay. I mean, you're doing great.
Yes.
Your audits, the state of the feds.
The feds audit us for the Medicare rate, and then we hire our own auditors to provide a report back to our board to let them know how we're doing and that we've met all the criteria and we followed all the rules. And I'm proud to say since 2019, we've had a clean audit. First year, not so much. But I got a little wiggle room. So 3.2 million is a lot for us. But let's talk about Medicaid. That's a little probably hard for you to see, but what I did was look at the population of the expansion population. I didn't include the kids because I think they're going to get left on no matter what.
It says Medicare expansion, but she's talking Medicaid.
I think, wow.
Medicare is involved in it, but it's actually Medicaid.
Huh? Yes, it's Medicaid.
Am I right, Kelly?
Yes. I was feverishly trying to put this together. Because I wanted to give you valuable information, but I wanted to do it in a way that you can understand in a way that I don't normally speak. I speak
CFO.
So what we think is going to happen is of that 1,504 Medicaid recipients on the expansion plan, we believe 38% of those are going to lose their coverage. So if that happens, that's 534 people. And I went back to 2024 and I said, okay, what's our average charge for outpatient, for outpatient anything inside our facility, excluding the clinic? That was surgery, ED, therapies, lab, X-ray, all of it. So I averaged it, and it was $2,067 per encounter. So if you multiply that 534 times the 2,067, $1.1 million in gross charges that we're going to lose next year. Now, since they only pay us 24 cents on the dollar, we're actually only going to lose $265,000 on that. So that was probably the lesser of the evils, but it's still, you know, everything that we try to project in the budget, which is my love in life, is based on historical facts and based on what do we really think is going to happen. And that's not always easy to predict, especially in the healthcare industry. So grand total, that's $4,279,000. Worst case scenario. I think it'll be a combination of more than one thing. It could be part of the provider fee. It could be part of the supplemental payments. It could be a way that they find a way to keep those folks, the expanded folks, on Medicaid through a different mechanism. It's interesting, though, that the state has basically passed their budget, but the feds have not, so they don't know what they're getting from them, right? And so it's kind of a game right now, a numbers game, and we just tried to do the very best that we could to put the numbers together and try to figure out, you know, what's the worst thing that can happen to us. And then we will try to plan for that. And what's the plan for that? We don't know. Yes.
Is long-term Medicaid an expansion?
No.
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 You talking about the nursing home?
Just no.
And I can't imagine they're gonna cut funding to nursing homes. That's not gonna be very popular. People have long-term Medicaid without being in a facility. Yeah.
Those are people who are disabled, under the age of
Yes.
65.
And that was in the original program. And so that was not any part of the expansion. Yes. Of my overall gross revenue
Sorry, could you
or my net?
could you make sure
Sorry.
you repeat the questions, please?
Budget or revenue or whatever we got.
Okay, so
Yeah, she's asking what percentage of the budget
of our total budget, well, I budgeted 39,000 for this year. 39,000 is a bottom line, is what my budget looks like
Because our
this year.
expenses are so high, just like your home expenses are so high. Our supplies are up 40%.
$39,000 is my bottom line. I'm a $90 million organization.
That's
So you know,
Total charges, $4 million out of $90 million. Of that $90 million, I only collect roughly half. So that's with the payer contracts, Medicare, Medicaid rates, I get half of that. And then I have about the same amount in net revenue as I do in expenses. So that's why my bottom line is only $38,000. We own all our physicians. And so they're on our payroll, and our payroll is 65% of all of our expenses.
So when we talked to the head of Medicaid, I was on the Colorado Hospital Association board for a few years, and I was at a meeting and I talked to the woman that's in charge of our Medicaid program for the state, in charge of PICFA. And her answer when we talked to her about how we needed more was that people will just have to come to the front range. And what I told her was, everybody doesn't have a car or $500 and the ability to pop up to the front range to get their care. And that should be the last thing she tells people in rural areas, because I famously quote the CEO from Alamosa, where you live shouldn't affect if you live. And that is the bottom line. So we're continuing to have that conversation. And they're moving a little bit on it. You know, we're dependent on the mill levy. We're dependent on a program called 340B, which is a program that started 30 years ago as a way we can get medication less expensively in the rural area. And Big Pharma, who has a lot of money and a lot of time to put ads on the TV, they don't like it happening. So there's been bills up in front of Congress and at the state level trying to get rid of that. So far, at the state level, we're looking pretty good compared to what's coming out of the committee. At the state level, the Joint Budget Committee came out and they declined the governor's ask of a decrease in Medicaid payment. Again, this is before we hear what the feds are going to do. And they actually wanted to give us a little bit of an increase on part of it, of the budget, in 1.6% or something like that. So we're looking good so far. So we're in active legislative sessions right now. Colorado Hospital Association is the lobby group. And so we're listening to them every day, really, give us a report on what's happening. So the more that people talk about what rural health care is, the more people understand it, right? We need that $900,000 we get from the 340B program. We are hopeful. There's one of us here who's supposed to have the most negative attitude. That is Shelley. There's one of us here who's supposed to be like the Walmart greeter and supposed to be having a great time. And so we balance each other pretty well, and we suspect that we will have a better year, $39,000, unless things start changing pretty quickly. Because right now we're having a good year for revenue, and our cash is coming in. So we are hopeful that what she puts in that budget, we're not the budget people, that we're hopeful that what she has written down is what should be our bottom line. But again, that's going to be worst case scenario prior to this latest worst case scenario. Because budgets are made out a year in advance. We're about to work on our budget. And in healthcare, things change every day. And so you can't always be right where your budget is. And we can't be like City Market and just raise our prices. We're paid contractually. So that's just the way it is. We can raise them a little bit once a year, but most payers it doesn't really affect. Yes.
So what happens if you lose 4.2
I'm gonna bring the microphone.
So what happens if your organization loses 4.2 million that you're getting?
Well, I personally will be crying in my office, and then we'll figure out a way to make it work. We'll figure out new service lines that we need to bring to the table that we can, that the community needs or is asking for. We'll figure out a way, even though I try really hard to become more efficient, and we'll be looking for some grant funds, quite frankly. We rely heavily on grants to get some of the equipment that we need. And so last year, we probably had upwards of $2 million in grants just to help us get some things done that needs to be done. A new MRI is over $2 million. I mean, it's you don't think about that. You put stamp healthcare on it, and it's now worth like 15 times more than it was if you hadn't stamped it, right? And so it's a constant battle for us. We're looking at our capital budget. We're saying, okay, what do we know we need to do, but we're not going to be able to. So it's a constant back and forth between, something breaks. I'm like, okay, what are we taking off, and so that's, what she's talking about when she's like, oh, but we got to do it. And I'm like, oh, we got to put it. But it is a constant shuffle.
So right now, we have a very low infection rate in surgery, always have. And yet we had an inspection this past summer, and we have to change the way we do sterile processing. So that was $500,000 we weren't planning to spend this year. That's just the way it is. That's what we have to do. Even though, we don't have a high infection rate, small town, please. Don't think so. I got my hair cut real short one time, and somebody thought I was on chemotherapy. It doesn't make the hair short. Just let me know. but it's around town, and so, but we have to pivot a lot throughout the month to kind of see where we are with things, and then something breaks. We've got a facility that needs a new roof for the part that used to be the primary care clinic that's now our oncology. That building that's been existing since the 90s has got to have a roof. That's just all there is to it. It needed a roof for a long time. We've got to seal our asphalt. Our asphalt's been down there 16 years. It's never been sealed. So we're going to do it this year. We're not pushing that. And we pushed it every year. But that's how it is. We have to, we fundraise with grants and we fundraise with community events. We can't run a hospital on fundraising, but we can get all the help from every avenue that we can and try to continue to do the best that we can. It's not for the faint heart.
This gentleman in the back had a question first.
I'm curious, how does that 4.2 million impact current staff, recruitment of staff, retention of staff?
Well, it affects us in all ways. Like I said, 65% of our expenses are staff, right? Staff and benefits. And so when you think about that, when we have about a $47 million expense budget, that's a huge chunk of that. And so, there have been times that we have to say, I'm sorry, we're not going to do an increase this year. We really want to, but we can't. There's been times that said, hey, we could do a little more this year. We're going to try to do a little more for you because we had a little bit better year this year. So we always have to take it a year at a time. We budget like we're going to give it so that we have, and I am a conservative person, and so my budget leaves room for a few little things to happen here and there, not 4.3 million. But it does leave a little room. And so, it's foreseeable that people could get scared and want to leave and find other jobs, and it could be harder to recruit. We're getting busier in a time that we're getting busier, and we need more physicians and we need more providers. To have something like this happen would be pretty devastating. But we would figure out a way. We always do. You always come down there.
If you want, Kathy.
And what do you expect in the grant realm? Do you have any concept of how it'll affect grants, receiving grants?
What I've read so far, and you can step in if you want to, Rhonda, just holler at me. What I've read so far is the government is clawing back some of the COVID funds. So there's still grants out there to this day that the COVID dollars were sponsoring. They're talking and they're acting on clawing some of those back. So far, none of the grants that we have right now are being affected by that, and we're hearing slowly from state agencies, hey, this one's not affected, you're good to go on this one. But most of those are only some of them are for a year, some of them for up to 3 years, and so we suspect that the ones we have right now are okay, but we do suspect that there's going to be a lot fewer of them in the future. DOLA has told us, you know what, we usually have 4 cycles in a year. This year, we'll be lucky to have 2.
Tell them what DOLA is.
Oh, sorry, Department
Department of Local Affairs.
of Local Affairs. There, see, I always use acronyms.
They do matching grants. So that is how we just remodeled that building on our corner. And you may wonder, why is it not open yet for physical therapy?
We're waiting on Medicare. We got money from DOLA, and they helped us build it. $2.5 million later, we're waiting on Medicare to tell us we can use it, and we've been waiting. we got an update today that said they're still working on that. But at least they emailed us. We haven't been hearing anything. So they have a certain amount of time, and then of course they laid off employees. We are in we're in a business where 20% of our workforce is gone through the COVID, right? They retired, they went to something else. We don't have a whole lot more that are coming out, and people, they don't want a lot of extra shifts anymore. They, want their work-life balance. We understand that 100%, but that's just the workforce has changed. And then you're looking at a place to try to recruit people to, where even doctors and nurses, and professional staff are having trouble finding housing they can afford to live in. So it's no different than other people in every business, and it's just what's happening in our community. It's no different than what's happening in other places. You know, and we are, however, the largest employer in Archuleta County. We don't intend to go anywhere. Again, we need systems. Systems need us. And so we just all working together with some systems to see just where this is going to all fall.
Way back there, she's been asking for a while.
I'm just wondering how the Affordable Care Act relates to all of this. First of all, whether it's likely to continue with the premium subsidies, because I'm assuming that a lot of the people who are now covered by Medicaid expansion were probably under the ACA before. And I'm wondering if those people will come back under the ACA or whether that's likely to be eliminated or whether the subsidies are going to be reduced or eliminated.
So about 90% of those subsidies come from the federal government. So what I think that you could expect if the expansion goes down, I think that you'll see insurance companies leaving states. And I'll say this, for instance, Wyoming never, I worked there for 4 years, Wyoming never expanded. They very right. They called elections where they got 5% of the votes. It's just the way it is. But they never expanded, and they actually hurt their communities. But because they only have 500,000 people there, the insurance companies wouldn't come in. So they had this huge disparity of people that didn't have coverage. Ranchers, I mean, every walk of life could not get coverage. I would suspect that the premiums, at least the premiums will go up. If they have to cover a wider base of people, the premiums will go up. And think about the change in mental thought process from going from Medicaid, where you have no limits on the kind of care that you can get, to an ACA program that's going to have, it's going to have a deductible, it's going to have co-pays. Folks aren't used, the ones that are on the Medicaid are not used to that. So that's a mindset change over time. And so at first it might be pretty bad. And then once they realize they have a stake in that game, things could change, but it will take some time.
So that makes me think we were talking earlier about the people that are more likely to use emergency care, then that this group could further exacerbate that. So if that occurs, I mean, are there things that you can do to plan for that and to introduce something else that helps those folks to not use the emergency care as much?
So we have a walk-in clinic. It's Monday through Friday. We tried to staff a Saturday clinic. We didn't have enough staff to do that. It kind of went by the wayside during COVID, and we still don't have the staff to do that today. PMG has a Saturday clinic, which is very, very helpful to us. And we try to provide care in every means that we can think of not to come to the ED, because that's not really where their primary care should be. But it does happen. EMTALA, Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act. Has anybody ever heard of that? That rocks our world. I'm just going to say. So basically it says that anyone that presents to the ED, we will not, it doesn't matter insurance, it doesn't matter your ability to pay, we are going to treat everyone in the ED. Now, some people rise to that level of really needing an ED, and absolutely. Some are at a lower level where they're just using it as a clinic. We're not going to refuse to treat them. We're always going to treat them. It's what we do. It's the law. We're very, very strict about following that law. But it does keep the cost of healthcare up, right? So there's going to be a series of tests we're going to do on that person regardless, because they present to the emergency room, right? It's not just usually a clinic visit and go home, because they got to make sure that in every way that they're taken care of before they leave the facility. Because we're responsible after they leave the facility, if that makes sense.
What impact does the Veterans Administration have on your operation?
Such as what?
Veterans present for care, how much does the VA pay versus? And then, are you losing money on veterans?
A little.
Okay.
Not bad. So, I mean, in the point of losing care, we want the veterans to come. We solicited the veterans shamelessly.
We like veterans,
And we
we
want,
like Medicare patients, and we like Medicaid patients,
absolutely.
and we like taking care of them. We're just telling you the facts about the way healthcare as a country.
Healthcare payment is wrong, right? It's not a sustainable long-term system. And so we know there'll be changes, more changes coming down. The head of Medicaid, that's the state, that's HICPA, and they're not our enemy. They pay us. They're getting softer. But they require, because they misinterpreted something that a patient said when he came in the front door while they were there on an inspection a few years ago, right after COVID. COVID just stopped, or sort of stopped. And they overheard a man who walked in the front door with his oxygen, who is frequently in our ER with their oxygen, and they wanted to go to the walk-in clinic. And so they overheard us say, okay, go down there. If somebody's very familiar with our facility, they just been in the ER the week before. But when they heard that, they said, we need to offer the ER to everybody. So currently Medicaid, in their wisdom, when you come in the front door of our hospital, we have to kind of offer you the emergency room, even though that's not where you're supposed to be. So we're not trying to get our costs up, we're just following what Medicaid told us to do. It's an interesting, it's the frontline staff that they don't really think about. The final end game of the rules that they make. That's why you get asked funny questions. We get some complaints about that. We're incredibly tightly regulated business, and HICPA is who protects us for the state and for the feds for the most part. So they're not our enemies, but whenever they come in the door, our hospital administration will announce, Ghost Springs Medical Center is proud to welcome the Colorado whatever we need to do.
That's our alarm system. So to go back to your question, veterans, they pay us about like Medicare does, which, so be it, that's fine with us. We really have tried to get veterans to come in. They had some issues early on. We hope that we've rectified that. We became an urgent care center so that they could come into our walk-in clinic so they could get care. And so hopefully those issues, we haven't heard anything for a long time that people had any issues, but if they do, we want to hear about them because they matter to us.
You go ahead.
Now, what's you?
I'm sorry. Well, first, thanks for taking care of veterans. I'm just confused a little bit on the possible losses. You say 36,000 in the black. Would this number bring that down to 36,000? Or is this a total loss and the 36,000 goes away?
Yes.
Okay, if I understand correctly, it looks like Medicaid is giving everything free.
Is what? Is what?
Giving everything for free.
To the recipients?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And people are saying that Medicaid is not working, for one thing. What about the people that could afford $10 as a copay? Why isn't Medicaid not looking at that and not lose so much money?
You'd have to ask the governor.
I don't like it.
I don't have an answer for that. I can't say it's working or it's not working. People do come in to get care, so that means they're not avoiding care. That means they're not getting sicker. So I would,
Don't go away yet.
Oh, don't go away yet. Okay. So I'm assuming that it does work in some respects. There's always going to be problems with any program, right? So that's a legislature question. I really can't answer that for you.
So this comment probably is in the same, department or whatever. If I'm able to pay for an extended insurance, but the way things are going with probably Social Security not even giving us any kind of increase and everything else going up, what's going to happen to people like myself, where I get to the point where I cannot work at all? Will Medicaid be around?
Well, I don't think there's any talk about Medicaid going away. I think it's more about who are they going to serve and when are they going to serve them, in what capacity can they serve them. No one has ever said Colorado Medicaid's going away. Well, you may have to approach things differently. Probably. Will you be able to afford that insurance? I don't know. What happens when people don't have any extended insurance and they end up in a nursing home, they call it a spin down. So you have to spend your assets down to a certain level, and then your money goes to the nursing home, and then that's kind of where it stays.
This is a little bit in the same vein, but with all the federal cuts that you're going to be facing, like federal cuts across lots of, like the Forest Service when these people are losing their jobs and they are in this community, what is the plan? Because they won't have insurance, they won't be on Medicaid, but you will have people with nothing coming to your facility. How is that going to work for you?
Well, there's going to be some hard questions to answer, and I don't know if you want to answer this, Rhonda, or not, but there's going to be some hard questions about what can we offer, right? If a significant amount of people lose their insurance coverage, they're coming into the ED, they either qualify for the HDC program, which is mandated by the state, or they just don't fill out any paperwork, which happens. We have our own financial assistance policy, but we have a hard time getting people to fill out the paperwork. They don't want people knowing their business, right? And so we ask some pretty detailed questions on there. And what we're trying to do is make sure that we apply that uniformly and that we're not treating one person different than another. But there will be some hard questions that come.
Well.
And here comes the soft side.
Before you leave here in a panic, we're being honest about facts. These are the facts that we know. My friends call me a science girl. And quite frankly, we just don't know a lot right now. We're trying to prepare as best we can, tightening our purse strings again. Again, our employees are making more money now. They need to live here. But we do have to stop and take a look at what we can offer. Expanding physical therapy, which the community asked for because the waits are so long for physical therapy, that will bring in more revenue to us and help support these other services that we don't make money off of. But our job is the health of the community, and so we want to continue to offer that. That is our business, but we have to think about the revenue and sustainability of us also. It's a balancing act, right? But if you come into our hospital, we're going to take care of you. That is our job. And we're hopeful people will work with us, apply for financial aid, fill out the paperwork. That just helps us some. If people are on Medicaid, that still pays something to us, and that helps us. We're not trying to send people away. The first death rate in our oncology department, our cancer treatment, opened in 2018 February. One of the first patients was a veteran whose wife had to drive him weekly to Albuquerque to get care. They cried when they started. And that is why we do what we do. And that's why we're here. We just don't have enough knowns, right? Right now, in cardiology, we can recruit another cardiologist after Dr. Lambert left. So Mercy Cardiology is going to send a cardiologist to us once a week, either him 1 week or his nurse practitioner the next. Met them, great people. And so that's in progress right now. Held up a little bit about the fact that Mercy is common spirit, which is a system, so we're waiting on that legal paperwork to come through. We've got our own lawyer. She just writes out fan for it. It's great. But, we just have to wait on the system to finish that. So we want to offer that again to the community because a lot of people, it's very hard for some people to draw to the land going back to their care. I mean, sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's nicer to have it right here. So that's what we're trying to do. Next.
We'll cut to the chase. What do you do with those uncollectible accounts? How long do you leave them on your books? Right, there are charges that people get that they cannot pay and they will never be able to pay. And how much of those are on your books now? And what do you do? What do you do with them eventually? You write them off. You send them to collection because it remains somebody's problem, even if it's written off on your check.
Yeah, we hold them for about 180 days, and so that is the process cycle that Medicare sets out. So a little weird. Through this process every year that we settle up with Medicare is a section that's called Medicare bad debts, and that's individuals who can't afford their co-pays or whatever. We try to collect those for 180 days, and then we write them off, and then we tell that Medicare about them, and they give us a little bit of money back on those. Other people we don't get credit for, but after we hold them all the same amount so that we're treating everyone the same. So 180 days, I have allowed for all of those accounts that are 180 days or over. Yeah.
Maybe this is a severe question, but for someone like myself who's not yet on Medicare, but I would love to retire to stay here forever, how bad do you think it has to get in order for you to get them and not leave anymore? I mean, seriously, because I maybe delete before that happens.
We'd have to align with the system a little harder, probably. Again, we like having our local
Control, we like knowing what we're doing. There's not a system around that doesn't want to take us over. So we've had good conversations rolling. We're not interested right now, and our board is not interested. My board members right here volunteer. But we do know we need each other, and we're trying to work with them, because that's just the way it is. They need us, we need them. We need a place to send patients. Systems aren't bad guys. They just don't always understand rules if they're not in rural. And so that would be the likely thing to happen if everything happened that way. We would not close the hospital. We just might have to be more closely aligned with the system. Yeah, which gets, it's not exactly what we want because then we all have bosses. We have 7. But anyway, it is a lot of the unknown. We didn't come here to scare you. We came because we were asked to talk about Medicaid. And I can't see us not being here in the future. It's too important to this community. We're the largest employer. And, we need to be here. And in general, it would affect, oh my gosh, the housing market. Houses would get a lot cheaper if the hospital wasn't here, right? It sure would. There's a lot of people would leave, but a lot of people want to live here because there's a hospital here. And for our size of community, we offer a lot of services. I'm not here just to brag about us. We have a lot of providers in town that are great, but we are able to do a lot for a small area that you can't always do in a small area. People ask if we get rid of EMS. No, we're trying to get sustainable enough to get EMS on the east end of town. And you should know, if you're on that end of town, that for the construction projects that are ongoing, we have an ambulance staged on the east side of town. We've worked with the county, fire, the sheriff, to find an area that they can be down there. They're not sleeping down there. It's just during the day when traffic's heavy. But so far that's working out for us. Their response times will be quicker. You think about this construction, our response times are going to be a little slower, right? But if we have an ambulance down there that's already on that side of they're past First Street. I think they move around a lot, but I think they're mostly coming down 84. But where they're available to be there faster. The Springs is going to double in size this summer. And no offense to Springs, I'm happy for them to do that, we run there a lot because people come out here and they've never been to altitude and then they soak a long time and maybe they have too much to drink or they have, it's not the only place we run downtown, but I'm just saying, if they get in a pool of 105 degrees and they just got here and they drove all night to get here, so they're all dehydrated. And, we do run there, a fair amount. Tried to get the owner of the spring to let me have an ambulance down there. I mean, like a permanent spot, like throw this into your expansion. But they didn't bite on it. But we do work with them. I mean, they're a very fine partner for us. But yeah, because they are an ambulance already down there so we can get up 160 and down 84 faster, and also not have to have that long drive from here. Jason Webb, who's our chief of EMS, you probably know Jason. He planned all this out and works very well with the sheriff and the fire people. So that's what we're doing right now.
I do talk a lot.
One quick, I'll just be on. What can we do to help?
Talk to your legislators. Let them know how important this hospital is to your community. I mean, we're doing it. We're sending them letters. We're throwing it out there and saying, this is the largest employer. We need to keep this community safe. We said at 7,500 feet. I mean, Lord have mercy, during COVID, we were wondering, can the oxygen people get here, right? And so what did we do? We built an oxygen generation station. It's not live yet, but that's what we used some of that CARES Act money for. And it was for our community and for our patients so that we would, not worry about how many patients that we had on high flow oxygen at any given time. We would just be covered going forward. And so that was a lesson that we learned. And so we're constantly trying to do things like that. We're trying to be self-sustainable. And I will tell you, the governor is very interested in our oxygen generation station because we're the first one, I think, to say this in the contiguous 48 states that have done this. Wow. Really? Yes. Wow. Yeah, we can't turn it on yet. They won't let us.
They don't quite know how to inspect it because it generates 93% oxygen, which is plenty. But we're not planning to open an oxygen company or business. That's not, we're not even allowed to. It's a DME company. But November 20th of 2020, we had sick enough patients on enough oxygen that we were calculating our oxygen usage by the hour. And we're like last on the delivery. We're an island, right? So we're like last on the delivery line. And so we were calculating by the hour whether or not we were going to have to ration care, which doctors of my generation, unless they were in the military, have really never had to do. So that's when we had talked about it even before all this, that there was a big incident that occurred and we couldn't get anywhere in or out. What's going to happen to lay people that are on oxygen is they're going to all come to our ED, and we can't take care of all of them at the time, right? So that's when we decided, that was even before COVID, that we were going to try to do this. It's actually Shelly's idea. And so we did that. We got the equipment, I think, in 21. We're still waiting to open. They got the wrong generator.
How come it's taking so long?
Well,
we couldn't afford it at the beginning. We
had to get more grant funds.
Maybe get more grant funds to match what we had gotten for COVID dollars.
Mostly for the building.
The building took a while. We're affected by the same thing everybody else is, right? You try to get a new dishwasher, and since the pandemic, you might get 3. You don't really need 3, but the first 2 didn't work, right? Or somebody put a forklift in the middle of the ice making machine. A friend of mine did. No, I buy a big trash compactor during the middle of the pandemic. Forklift right through the middle. Right through the middle. They delivered it anyway. That's just the kind of stuff that's been happening, and it happens to us too. There's no difference. There's just a lot of delays on things. So it's hard to remember exactly why it got so far behind.
Well, when we bought the equipment with the CARES Act money, we knew we were going to need more money to get it up and running. The building alone was $600,000 to put it in.
Wow. And it's not very big.
It's not big. It's nothing to be proud of. And so we knew that we got some more grants. We got DOLA to give us some money for it. We got another grant to give us some money for it. Eventually, we had enough money to build it and put it all together. Now we're waiting on, so it's a 2-generator oxygen system. So one's the primary, one's the backup. And then we're waiting on the generator that would be the backup power to the generators. And it was on like a 3 or 4 month delay. The original one that they set for that wasn't the right one, of course, as it is. And then we had to order a bigger one. So the next hurdle for us is there's a lot of regulation that goes on with oxygen. Being able to fill our own tanks, they all have to be labeled. There's just a huge amount of red tape. But then the state hasn't exactly approved the 93 to 97% oxygen. They're right on the cusp of it, but they haven't done it yet. So we'll have to put it to work, get cited, and then ask for a waiver to be able to continue to use it.
Which is what they told us to do.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to get in trouble for it, and then we'll let you do it. We can't make this stuff up.
It's about right? It's all backwards. There's someone over here.
I'm the last person that wants to raise taxes in any way. And I was wondering, how could you get another mill levy passed if it's been that long in between?
We thought about it, but we didn't really think it's the right time. You know, everything's going up. Food prices are going up. People are struggling all the way anyway. It's kind of a tax-averse community. We just didn't think the timing was good.
It's in our strategic plan, which is active until 28, try. Next year we have, so,
I hate this topic almost more than anything. And it is about Tabor and being debruced. And I still don't quite understand it, but in about a year, you're going to be voting on Tabor and debrucing.
Debrucing us from Tabor.
Yes. And we would beg you to do what we think you ought to do on that, because we do need the tax money we can get. And again, we did talk about going to the community and asking for that. It's just so many people are struggling right now. And it just didn't seem the right timing. I mean, we talked about people on fixed incomes who now have these expenses that are super high and aren't getting a big amount of money from Social Security. There's a lot of people like that. And they're already paying more property taxes. So our property tax went up to that $2 million, I guess, a year ago, which is, again, 16 days of operating, so it's not a ton, but it keeps us in the block. So if we ever had to, when we talk to the politicians when they come through, when we talk to the grant people, we talk to DOLA, we applied for congressionally directed funds because we need a new generator overall for our physical plant. Congressionally directed funds is the court money that's sometimes left at the end of the year. And we're getting told by them that we need to go back to our people and ask for an increase in our mill. So they are aware of that. We just didn't think timing was correct for this year to go ask for a mill until we kind of see what settles. That's all we can do, right, is sort of see what settles. And that's the facts. Those are the facts.
last one.
I just wondered if hospitals have any kind of plan amongst themselves for a catastrophic situation like another round of COVID or bird flu or giant eruption somewhere.
Or measles?
Measles, where the hospitals are being inundated with patients that they never anticipated.
We do.
Well, luckily, the measles doesn't normally kill people. We have a plan for when and if we start seeing them. And, you know, we've kind of gotten really good with those plans. We survived through COVID. Sometimes we think it was by the skin of our teeth. But we did a good job. And we lost a lot of staff. And we stayed open. And we still provided all the services that we had provided before. And may have been different people that you were seeing doing it. But even myself, I was registering patients. And so, they didn't pay me to register patients, but that's what was needed at the time, and so that's what we did. I think people are worried about the measles. The weird thing is it's isolated right now. You know, there's a big group of them, but we have measles every year in the United States. They're just not clumped together like that. And so you know, I've read that was this year so far, we've got the same amount of cases as we had last year, but it was spread over 37 states. And so that's the difference. And so it is still around, but just not clumped like that.
You know, we always have to have a plan. We have to be able to execute that plan. We have conversations a lot with our regional people. So we do have a plan for how we would work together on things. Not too long ago, in the last 3 months, something stopped working in the operating room. And so I talked to the Mercy CEO who put that word out that we were going to go on the curb. So if we don't have the washer, yeah, that we might not be able to reduce cases. And so they were on the alert. And he notified his people that we were ready to take incoming patients, but if we needed to send things down there. So that's kind of the way we do that for now. If something major happens here, we'll just have to deal with it when it comes. You can't know what's going to come. That's why science girl was so crazy during COVID. We all kind of were. Who wasn't? I mean, you know, it's just things changing so fast. But yes, we have, I can't involve committees. We have safety. We work with the community. What's it called? Emergency operations. That's Jason Webb. So we try to think we're on top of all that. We didn't plan for the pandemic though, because we hadn't had one all the time, right? So we just dealt with this. That's all you can do.
And we know you're going to be looking to us when the time comes, right? I mean, I've been in several places, but tornado, for instance, you know, when the tornado sirens off, they all showed up at the hospital. That was just the way it was. And they would come, they would plug in their tube feedings. You know, it's amazing what you don't think about until it happens. They didn't have any place to plug their oxygen concentrators in. And so we know that you're going to look to us for that. And so that's why we're trying to get a bigger generator. We're trying to get more of the building on emergency power. Just always trying to think ahead of the game and try to fix something before something goes wrong.
So we bounce around and talk about a lot of things. If I got ahead of myself and said something funny that was offensive to anybody, no intention. In our lives, we have to laugh a lot. We see a lot of things. And I think that's just something we all need to do. So if anything comes out on that video and you get any calls, just give me a shout. If it's what you need, just try to make a point about something.